Research, tips for best practices. So in this video, I want to give you just a few tips to help you with your research as you are looking into different sources for information for your book. Now, not every author has research to do, but I would say probably most authors have at least a little bit of research that they look into. And so if you do have some research to do, these tips are going to help you through that process. And down the line, when you need this information, you're going to be really glad that you implemented it. So let's dive in. The first one is to keep a log of all your resources. So whatever it is that you are going out and looking at, so whether you're reading an article, listening to a podcast, maybe watching some YouTube videos, reading books, wherever you're going to get some information, whatever that source is, you want to write it down where you found it. To do that, you can create a spreadsheet using Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel, which is probably the best, or you could use the equivalent on Google Sheets, or just take a piece of paper and pencil and write it down. The reason you want to do this is because if you use these sources at all in your book, then you're going to need to create a citation, which is nothing more than like a footnote or an endnote, and you'll learn more about that later. So initially, as you are looking at different sources, you can write down some basic information to help you find that information again, such as a website, title and date of a publication. Like I said, if you're reading an article or something, the page number where you found it, maybe the author name of that article or the author of a book title, perhaps a date and title of a podcast, so you can find that again, audiobook, so forth, whatever. Write down some basic information, because if you want to go back and look at that information again, or you decide that you are going to be using it in your book, then you do need to create a citation. And there's certain information that you are going to need to create that footnote or endnote. And if you don't write it down when it comes time to create those notes, then you could be finding yourself in a position where you don't remember where you found that source, where you found that information. So if you have a spreadsheet and you write the sources down, then you can at least go back and be able to figure out where you found that information. Whether you use this or not, write everything down, because then you'll have it available to you if you would change your mind later that you actually do want to use the information. The next thing is to make sure you're understanding your audience and their needs, what they want. So if you have not yet defined who your one is, as was discussed in the Laying the Foundation module, then I'm going to encourage you to stop now, go back and re-watch the video on your one, and then come back and finish this. Researching your audience is going to help you to better serve them. So first you have to know who they are. You really want to have a good definition of who your audience is. And then where do they like to get their information from? Like, do they like to go to social media? Do they like TikTok? Do they like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube? Where do they go for that? Maybe it's books. Maybe they are avid readers. And you will probably know some of this anyway, because of the fact that you want to write a book on this particular topic means you probably already have some experience in this. And for instance, if they really like books, what type of books are they and how do those books deliver the information? This means knowing your genre and how your genre delivers information on that topic. How does your audience like to learn? Example is if you're writing to a teen versus adult, they can learn differently. So the type of information you give them, how you deliver it can be different. Maybe it's visual versus audio. Some people are very visual. Others like to listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks, and things of that nature, watch videos. TikTok is video, it's for videos, right? And so if your audience loves videos, that's a platform where your audience might be. So why does that even matter? Because you want to understand where to market as well. So this is all part of your research, because it's all fine and dandy to write your book, but then if you don't know where to market your book, you're not going to get the sales that you want. So this is all part of your research, and you might discover some things that would be pertinent to your topic. Like, what type of information are they looking for? Again, if you already have this topic in mind, sometimes you need to just meet your audience where they're at and then give them what they need. And I think I talk about this in another video, but it's really understanding what is it that they need. They might think they want one thing, but they really need another. And so you kind of need to combine them together. And I think I talk about that in more detail in the video on Who's Your One. So if you are still unsure about that, I would recommend go back and watch that. Now, as I've said, you probably already have some experience in some of these things I've already talked about, because you know you want to write about a certain topic. And so you may not need to delve deep into some of these things because you already know them and are familiar with these things. And that can save you some time. But if not, it can be a good thing to just go out, take some time and find out where your audience is and how do they receive their information most of the time. It doesn't mean you can't write your book. It just means it's going to help you in your research and your marketing down the line. Conducting interviews. You may want to do some interviews for your book, whether that's one person or multiple persons, individually or as a group setting. If you want to do any interviews, I recommend trying to get them all scheduled and done before you begin to write. And you're going to want to make sure that the people you interview are reputable. And part of the reason why you want to do these interviews first and consider them part of your research is because if you are planning to use some of that information from these interviews in your book, if you start writing now and you haven't done the interviews, you might end up having to rewrite everything. So it's best to gather as much information as you can up front and then sit down and write, because you're going to want to evaluate all the information that you've got anyways. You need to go through it and decide what's relevant and what's not. So it takes a little bit of time to go over everything that you've collected. The other thing that's really important is anytime you involve somebody else in it, whether it's a testimony, an interview, something like that, get written permission from them to use that information. You want to be specific, just have a little document created and be specific about where you want to use the information. Using it in your book, if you plan to use it on your website or social media, and even if you don't, you might want to put it on there in case you change your mind and you want to. Because if you want to put those interviews or those testimonies or anything on your website or on social media and even in your book, it's best to get written permission because this can prevent problems down the line. I highly recommend it. FTC has gone after people for not having permission, written permission from people to use their information. And if somebody would happen to turn on you, even though they maybe gave you a testimony or they gave you this interview, if for some reason they decide they're mad at you or something, they could sue you and say, I never gave them permission to put my interview in their book or on their website or whatever. And if you don't have written permission from them, they likely will win the case. So this covers you. It's probably most of the time not going to be an issue, but you don't want to be the one person that this happens to. It's just create a short little document and have them sign it and date it, and then you sign and date it, give them a copy of it, and then you keep the original. Trust me, you just don't want to take the chance with the FTC, because the FTC, if you are non-compliant in any way, they're going to say, too bad, so sad. All right. Whatever source you choose to gather your information from, again, you want to make sure that it is reputable. And here's a for instance. There's a lot of satirical publications out there. I see them all the time as I scroll through Facebook, and you think it's a news article, you're starting to read it, and you're like, wow, I can't believe that happened. And then you realize it's a satirical publication. And so it's not facts. It's created for entertainment. And you want to have facts. Nonfiction books are supposed to be based on fact. So make sure the source that you are getting your information from is reputable and it is factual. You can ask yourself if the information that you've gathered can be verified. Can it be backed up by any other sources? Anytime you collect data, you want to make sure that it's verifiable, especially if you're, quoting numbers or some sort of statistics, things like that. Those should be quite verifiable if you just go out and search other sources to make sure that what you got was actually truth. Now, if you're interviewing somebody and you're just trying to get their story, hopefully they're factual. Maybe you can verify it somehow, but that's going to be a little bit harder to verify because it's just their story. That falls into maybe a little bit of a different category, but when you are dealing in hardcore facts, it should be verifiable. Theological sources. So as a Christian author, you may be pulling information from interviews, books, articles, and of course, you're probably pulling something out of the Bible. Again, not all books as a Christian author are spiritual in nature, but you're going to want to treat all of these sources, again, making sure they're reputable. Obviously, the Bible is reputable. That's not what I'm talking about here, but you're going to want to look at the books. Who's the author? What's their background? The articles, interviews that you see, videos you watch on YouTube. Are these sources reputable? So just as any other type of source that you're looking at, you want to make sure that these are reputable. And probably even more so because as a Christian, and if you are trying to give some theological source, you're trying to express something from a biblical standpoint, you want to make sure you can back it up. So the information you gather from these other sources, can it be backed up by the Bible? So an interview and somebody says something, go out and verify, unless you already know that it's true. And if you hear something that's kind of new for the first time, go out and see if you can find it to be truthful from a biblical standpoint. Again, keep track of all your sources. With scripture, you want to not only keep track of the particular scripture, like let's say Psalm 1:1, you want to keep track of what version of the Bible you used. Did you use NIV, New King James, the Passion Translation, whatever it is, you want to write that down as well. And then where did you get it from? Was it an online Bible? Is it a hard copy printed Bible? Keep track of that as well, because if you do quote anything online, you want to, like there's, what is it called? The Bible Gateway is an online Bible. You would want to make sure you're quoting that properly when you're doing your citations. Artificial intelligence. Okay, so lot of controversy with artificial intelligence, the pros and cons and all that kind of thing. But it's a great source for research. It is okay to use artificial intelligence. In fact, we use it probably every day. We just don't necessarily think of it as artificial intelligence. If you use Google at all to search anything, or really anything that's on the computer, is probably some sort of artificial intelligence. Where the problem lies is when there's a couple different things that could actually be a problem. One is if you're letting AI write the bulk of your book for you. That's not really ethical. The other thing is AI cannot necessarily be trusted to be accurate. I have asked AI questions about things and I've gotten answers back that were 100% false. You got to remember, AI is pulling from all kinds of different sources out there on the web. And a lot of people put false information out there. So it depends, or it's old information, from way back when, and since has been proven, oh, that's not really the best way to go about this or whatever, but it's pulling from an old source rather than a more current source. So you want to make sure that what AI is giving you is also accurate. And you can ask it for its source. So let's say you want to ask them, can you find me an article or some report, something that tells the statistics of the number of men versus women that suffer from heart disease. And please give me the source where you are getting this information from. And it will give you that source. So let's say AI found some medical report. They will give you that source where they found it so that you can go out and look it up. And then from there, you can verify it with other sources if you want to. So don't trust AI 100% because it's not always accurate. Now, I do have a bonus module that dives much deeper into AI, how to use it, ethical ways of using it, and so forth. So you can watch that bonus module and learn a lot more about AI and how you as an author can use it. All right, so here's your action steps. First, go out and create a spreadsheet. Whether you use Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets, or you just like using Word or a sheet of paper, whatever you want to do, create some sort of a tracking sheet. You'll learn more about this, again, in the citations module for footnotes and endnotes, where I go into much more detail about what those are, how to use them, and the information you need. Then something else that can help you out is to sit down and make a list of the sources that you think you want to use, or you know that you want to use. Let's say you know that there's 3 individuals that you plan on interviewing, you can add them to your list. But maybe you're like, well, I might want to go watch that interview by so-and-so. It's on YouTube. Write it down. Whether you do or not, write it down. So you're creating a list of sources that you think or know you want to use. And how this can help you is, as you're going through and you're gathering information, it's easy to forget about different sources that you've heard about or that you wanted to check out. So if you sit down and make a list of them, then you can always refer back to that list and see what were the things that you thought you wanted to look into. And some of them you might say, yeah, no, I don't need to do that anymore. Or, oh yeah, I forgot that one. So the list can just help you stay on track and not forget anything. And from there, once you get that in place, start your research, get it done. It's best to have all of your research done before you start writing.